America's Cup, the Chicago preview. XCats in Lugano, Windsurf Speed Worlds, and more. And now in the newsroom, here's Jero Malingri. NC Sports, plunge into the action.
Welcome back for the latest NC Sports edition. I'm Jero Malingri, and we've got another packed lineup today with multiple events happening worldwide and across all disciplines. Let's take a grand tour. The World Series hits Chicago. Special preview with America's Cup insider and new NC Sports correspondent, Jack Griffin. Dunkerbeck's a need for speed at the GPS Challenge in Fuerteventura. Then, XCats victory comes back from behind in Lugano. World Match Racing Tour, Canfield seals a hat-trick in Newport, while Paredes and Iffland dive to victory in Texas. Surf page, top Coudbreak action from Tavaraua at the WSL Fiji Pro. And from Australia's Cape Fear Challenge. Botìn and Santurde double up at the Atlantic Cup with Leg 2 in Portland. And the Imoca 60s at the New York Vendée go down to the wire in the Sables. As many of you know, the America's Cup World Series is now in Chicago for its third stopover of the season. Expectations are, of course, quite high, especially after the huge success in New York just last month. Today we have a very special guest linking in with the newsroom whose Cup experience is known worldwide. Let's get some insight on Chicago. Here's Jack Griffin, journalist, author, and now also a new NC Sports correspondent. Hi Jack, welcome on board. It's great to have you on NC Sports.
Hey, Jero, it's great to be here.
The World Series hits Chicago, and considering the success in New York, what has been the impact on the U.S. media and public? Sailing is getting some real traction now in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, this sailing is so impressive. These machines are incredible with the foiling, the wing sails. It's just a different dimension. And getting it in close to city centers. Of course, in 2013, it was on San Francisco Bay for the entire summer. But getting to New York, getting to Chicago, this is really, really giving a boost to the uptake by the U.S. market.
Now, this is yet another tricky, gusty metropolitan race course where just about anything can happen, and we saw that in New York. And we still got the Kiwis leading the series with a super Burling. But, I mean, this is one open playing field.
So, yeah, still lots and lots to play for. And remember that every Sunday, they're running these double points races. So now with 3 races on both Saturday and Sunday, there's 60 points on Sunday, 30 points on Saturday for all first place finishes. So if anybody could pull off 6 bullets, they could score 90 points in one event. Unlikely, but mathematically possible. So keep your calculators warmed up. This isn't over yet.
And we've seen how mathematically possible can become true at the last Cup. And in fact, on points, the America's Cup 35 has de facto started in the sense that while the World Series is just a sort of a prelude, these points do count. And we saw how critical they became at AC 34.
Oh, whoa. These points count for a lot. These points can carry all the way through to the America's Cup match. Here's how. The winner of the America's Cup World Series starts the round robins in match racing. They start the round robins with 2 points. The runner-up starts with 1 point. That could be the difference between first and second. It could be the difference between fourth and fifth among the challengers. So a challenger, if there's a tie, the World Series standards will be used as a tiebreak. There are bonus points coming out of the World Series going into the round robin series, and that the winner of the round robin series carries a potential bonus point into the America's Cup match. So what's happening in Chicago this weekend and all the rest of the World Series events that counts. That's why these guys are so serious about it.
The big foiling revolution is now a phenomenon. Now, perhaps in 2013, we still saw the teams struggling, both with the tech and the sailing. Now, they really seem like they've mastered the art now.
Yeah, well, you know, on the boats that they're sailing now, that they're racing now, the AC-45s, they're relatively primitive as far as the foil controls. But what we're seeing in the test and development boats that we get a really good look at in Bermuda, because there's 3 teams training there, Oracle Team USA, SoftBank Team Japan, and Artemis Racing, all testing their test boats there. We've also seen Ben Ainsley racing with their test boat out on the Solent. The trick is in the stuff that you can't see. It's in the shape of the foils, which is part of the design challenge, and it's really, really in the control systems to be able to finely adjust the foils and to manage the power that has to come from only 4 grinders for all of the hydraulic systems on the boats. So, yeah, things have taken a really big step up since the 2013 Cup.
Without taking anything away from the old monohulls, of course, but Jack, we could go on this forever, but we'll catch up with you next week after the races in Chicago so we can do a real recap and see what the balance of power is going to be like.
Yeah, just one last thing about Chicago.
Sure.
No current like we had in the Hudson River, and the wind shadows from the buildings will be much less because Chicago's skyscrapers are much more spread out and further away from the racing area than we had in New York. But I'll be back next week and be glad to bring everybody up to date on what has happened in Chicago.
We can't wait. Jack, thanks a lot, and fair winds, and we'll catch up next week then.
Hey, we'll see you then, Jero.
From the America's Cup, now back to some very cool board action as the Windsurf Speed World Championship completed its 3rd edition last Sunday in Fuerteventura. Invented and branded by Denmark's windsurfing legend Bjorn Dunkerbeck, this relatively new concept gathers riders from all ages and categories in a weekend competition where rank is based on the highest speed obtained over a 250-meter stretch.
Pros and amateurs is a great combination because you get all the hobby windsurfers that really windsurf for the spirit and the love of windsurfing together with some of the top in the world.
This year's GPS Dunkerbeck Speed Challenge once again saw its mastermind prevail with a top speed of 38.17 knots, followed by the UK's John Sky at 36.66 and Sweden's Marcus Emanuelsson with 36.21. Tough battle among the ladies between Zara Davis of the UK setting 31.80 knots for the World Crown, just ahead of Spain's Maria Jose Medina Hernandez 31.65. Meanwhile, pro windsurfers are heading to Spain's Costa Brava for the Catalunya PWA World Cup. Second stop for slalom specialists. All eyes on ranking leader Matteo Iachino from Italy, with a pack of flying Frenchmen on his heels like Mussolimani, Morfond, and of course, multiple world champ, Antoine Albo.
The roar of the XCats storms Lugano with victory on a comeback. Taylor Canfield seals the deal in Newport and picks up a huge overall lead at the World Match Racing Tour, while cliff divers stop over in Possum Lake, Texas. Top action from around the globe coming up on the NC Sports Briefs.
Victory Team made it 3 in a row and extended their already colossal overall lead with a win in round 3 of the UIM XCat World Series in Lugano, Switzerland. Despite starting 4th from the grid, duo Arif Al-Zafain and Nadir Bin Handy made a clean start and maintained the lead throughout the race at speeds of up to 86 knots. Gold Coast Australia, on pole position, had a poor takeoff but made a fantastic though late comeback to finish just 6 seconds behind in the number 2 spot after overtaking Abu Dhabi, closing in 3rd. Victory Team's hat trick solidifies their domination of the series before a 3-month break in competition. During the event, the WPPA also announced it had signed a deal with Lugano making the city a staple on the series circuit for 3 more years.
It was all excitement, shock, and euphoria for lucky fans gathered in Newport's Fort Adams for the World Match Racing Tour, as it came down to a heart-stopping Sunday super final between the Kiwis and the Americans. Canfield versus Robertson was an open match, but US 1 pulled away with a 3-1 over Team Waka. However, this was a mix of great racing and even comical mistakes on both sides.
For sure, a big win for the team here in the U.S. And I made a bunch of mistakes this week, and that's what kept us from being the top of the fleet racing rankings and the qualifying. And then a couple more mistakes here in the finals and the semifinals. But the team was able to pick me up, and we were able to overcome those mistakes.
Adding to its victories in Long Beach and Copenhagen, Team US 1 not only nails the hat-trick, but also builds a virtually unassailable lead of 30 points overall on the UK's GAC Pindar, with 6 times world champion Williams and Sweden's Nikolaj Sehested on trefoil. The World Match Race Tour 2016 world title is now tightly already in American hands, as it moves to the big final in Marstrand on July 4th.
Thrills, surprises, and record-breaking performances. The season opener of the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series at Hell's Gate, Texas had it all. More than 12,000 fans watched from the waters of Lake Possum as 22 of the world's elite divers faced off at speeds reaching upwards of 85 kilometers an hour. In the women's camp, Australian wildcard in her rookie season, Rhiannon Iffland captured the victory, closing a full 10.4 points ahead of runner-up Texan Cecily Carlton. 21-year-old Helena Merton from Australia, the youngest diver in the competition, took third, while 2-time Women's World Series champion Rachel Simpson couldn't make it past sixth. On the men's side, Mexico's Jonathan Paredes delivered an almost perfect dive to earn the top spot ahead of former British Olympian Blake Aldridge and Czech World Series veteran Michael Navratil, who took the number 2 and 3 spots respectively. Despite performing a spectacularly difficult dive, 5-time World Series champion Gary Hunt came up short to finish in 4th place. Next up, the series heads to Copenhagen, Denmark for round 2 on June 18th.
Top surf at the men's Fiji Pro and on Australia's Cape Fear. The Mocha 60s to a 3-way finish in Le Sable. Class 40, Botìn and Santurde win leg 2 in Portland, Maine. And now the Atlantic Cup is nearly in the bag for Spain. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with SC Sports after the break. Coudbreak reshuffles the world rankings, and the veterans are hitting back at the men's Fiji Pro in Tavaraua. Meanwhile, down under, 16 surfers battle it out on Cape Fear, Sydney's deadly wave break. Let's check out today's surf page.
Coudbreak is still at the heart of the surf action as the men's WSL Fiji Pro is wrapping up on the tiny Pacific island of Tavaraua. The unstoppable Slater, a sabbatical Fanning, and even the retired Burrows put on high scores in the early rounds. All eyes on top 3, Wilkinson, Ferreira, and Florence. Can they hold their course? Meanwhile, down under, in the very bay where Captain Cook landed to settle in Australia over 2 centuries ago, lies a spot that is infamous for its shipwrecks under the fury of the Pacific Ocean. This is Cape Fear, and this year it was 18-year-old Russell Bjerke that tamed the seemingly unsurfable break, scoring a perfect 10, and winning the Red Bull Cape Fear Annual Challenge ahead of a pack of talented and very gutsy riders.
It's a windless arrival in Les Sables for the New York Vendée as a high-pressure system sits on the Bay of Biscay. Hugo Boss stayed north, while Maître Coq and Edmond de Rothschild went south. It's the last big test before the Vendée Globe in November. Bayou, Joss or Thompson? Let's see who picked the winning option.
It was a dreaded slow-motion finale for the three leaders at the New York Vendée. A huge patch of nothing awaited the fleet in France with readings from 0 to 4 knots in the last 48 hours of the race, and with just over 300 nautical miles to the finish line. Time for a gamble, and perhaps a local knowledge was to some advantage, as the leading French IMOCAs with Jérémy Bayou and Sébastien Josse stayed south and got the early breeze, unlike Alex Thompson's bid to the north on the straight course. After 9 days, 16 hours, 57 minutes at sea, Maître Coq sailed into Les Sables d'Olonne as a winner. About 2 hours later, Edmond de Rothschild also crossed the line, just ahead of Hugo Boss on the podium in third. Notably, all three skippers sailed a new generation foiling IMOCA 60, and had few challengers after PRB's pit stop for repair in the Azores. Fans in France's offshore sailing capital were out in droves, warming up for November and the biggest bash ever, the Vendée Globe Challenge.
C'est une belle victoire.
It was a superb race. We had prepared for it well. The whole team really worked hard to put me in the condition of racing on a performing boat.
Je souhaitais au départ de cette course-là avec un bateau performant. Et ça a été
And it was a real battle between the first three. So I'm really happy for the win.
Donc voilà, c'est une superbe course à avoir gagnée.
Covering the 360 nautical miles from New York to Portland, Maine in just over 54 hours, Gonzalo Botìn and Pablo Santurde have won Leg 2 of the Atlantic Cup for the Class 40. Now, with Leg 1 from Charleston to the Big Apple already in the bag, it sure looks like the Spanish team will sail away with the 2016 edition of this new All-American double-handed classic.
"25 to 30 knots of wind swept the Leg 2 course last Saturday for the international fleet of Class 40s at the Atlantic Cup, in another great send-off from New York Harbor. Spanish duo Botìn and Santurde once again showed who's boss, taking an early offshore option that soon paid off with a hefty 17 nautical mile advantage at the Nantucket Passage. There was no catching them after that. A second victory in Portland for Teles 2, and with the last stage of inshore racing ongoing this weekend and few points still up for grabs, the 2016 Atlantic Cup title appears already wrapped in red and yellow. Erindil, with France's Catherine Pour and Antoine Carpentier, also confirmed the overall rankings with another second place. While the USA's Team Oakcliff, this time with Hobie Ponting and Andrew O'Donnell, finished 5th in Portland, but holds on to 3rd place overall thanks to its 3rd place finish in Leg 1 to New York, with the all-women crew Liz Shaw and VOR veteran Libby Greenhog.
Two more classics, the Giralha and Kieler Woche, while the Extreme Sailing Series is due to land in Cardiff. We got major sailing action heading your way, so mark the dates. It's all coming up on the NC Sports calendar.
A record 302 boats from around the globe will face off in this year's edition of the Giralha Cup from June 10th to 18th. The competition gets underway with overnight races from Marseille and San Remo to Saint-Tropez, followed by 3 days of inshore regattas and culminating in one of the Mediterranean's premier offshore classics, La Giralha. The 241 nautical mile course takes sailors around the tiny islet just north of Corsica to Genoa for the prize-giving ceremony. Now in its 64th edition, the event was founded in 1953 in a bid to rebuild relations between Italy and France after World War II. Kieler Wacha in northern Germany is back for its 134th edition from June 18th to 26th. Known as the mother of all regattas, the world's largest sailing jamboree attracts some 4,000 sailors, 2,000 boats, and 3 million fans each year. 1,700 events are planned, including 360 regattas covering the entire spectrum of classes. Also on the agenda is a send-off of the national German Olympic and Paralympic sailing team, a windjammer parade of freighters from the 19th century, and a wide array of on-land festivities. Nautical Channel will be broadcasting live excerpts from the Kiel Classic. Act 3 of the Extreme Sailing Series gets underway in Cardiff, UK from June 23rd to 26th. Oman Air currently leads the series with 23 points after 2 rounds of racing in Muscat and Qingdao, followed by Alinghi and Red Bull tied in second with 21, and Land Rover Bar Academy in third with 19. Now in its 10th edition, this year's racing takes place on brand new hydrofoiling GC32s and features a combination of open water and stadium events.
Well, thanks for staying with us. Today, top events are still ongoing, so we'll be back next week with more sensational stories from the wide world of water sports. In the meantime, we'll leave you with this fresh footage just in from the Sailing World Cup in Weymouth, Portland, the last test before the Rio Games. I'm Jenna Malingri, and remember, plunge into the action with NC Sports.